You know, hope and potential can keep you playing a game for quite some time. I remember realizing that I played the Cycle Frontier for the entire time based purely on its potential. I know this because as soon as they announced the shutdown, I stopped playing it cold turkey instantaneously, meaning that there was more potential than actual game that was keeping me there. And for a lot of games that are kind of early on in their development and early access or betas, that's kind of what keeps most people playing, which is why when you see a game progressing from beta to early access in a bad direction, it's so disappointing. Since the shutdown of the Cycle Frontier, I've been looking to fill that gap, an extraction shooter that falls somewhere in the gigantic gap between Escape from Tarkov and its various clones, and Hunt Showdown. Preferably in a sci-fi setting, but ultimately just a solid, middle-of-the-road extraction shooter. And Level 0 Extraction, rough edges and all, seem to come pretty close in many ways, but its early access launch somehow demonstrated that the devs just don't understand the genre and what makes it fun. They somehow made the majority of the issues that plagued the game in negative ways worse, and added new issues. Well, for starters, the release timing was gonna hurt them regardless. During the open beta, there was a bit of a dry spell in regards to relevant competition, and the game was free to try. They were originally going to release the game on August 6th, but because Delta Force was dropping their alpha on the exact same day, they elected to push it back a week. It was a smart choice in my opinion. In the time between open beta and early access, however, Delta Force still has its alpha running, ABI with all of its issues, it's still going to pull players anyways, and Dungeon Board is now in early access. Now of course these games are very different than Level 0 Extraction. However, it is still an extraction genre which overlap a lot of players, particularly ones that aren't interested in Hunt or Escape from Tarkov. They're kind of all in the middle ground. Even Dungeon Board being the most different of them all, will still pull many of the same players anyway, so timing wise could have been better. However, the game itself will ensure that the ones who do try Level 0 Extraction will be asking for refunds pretty quickly. You see, the game's biggest weakness has consistently been its new player experience, and they managed to make it worse. The nail gun was already an unfun experience. The weapon, the way it plays, just the aesthetic, it just doesn't fit with the theme of the game. You're drawn into this sci-fi world where you play as a mercenary raiding the state-of-the-art facility, and the entire beginning experience is you playing Captain Construction. Now, this isn't new. This was a major issue in the beta which I illustrated in my previous review, but its effectiveness was pretty close to that of the pistol, so I figured you can just start players off with the pistol and then show off the good gunplay. Which, by the way, credit where credit is due, once you do get to roll real guns, the game is absolutely fun, but you're not going to get that experience within the Steam refund window though. Again, nothing new from the open beta, but apparently the devs in early access now have decided you're not using the nail guns enough. They nerfed it now, so now it feels even more like a paintball gun and made it harder for you to grind to real guns. How did they do that? Well, they added a new, harder map. Now I know what you're thinking. What does that have to do with anything? Isn't it more content a good thing? Here's the problem. The contracts that are the main way you level traders in order to get the real guns run on both maps regardless of your level. So if you're a new player trying to slog your way out of this god-awful experience, you might very well have both of your gunsmith contracts be on the hard map. That's kind of a kick in the dick moment right there. Players, when they download the game, they're looking at it and going, oh look, a cool game. We can play as a gun-wielding mercenary in a sci-fi universe having fun gunfights. And then, well, you download the game, the devs are right there behind you going, no, you work in construction today. After all, they spent all this time and money developing these assets. They can't possibly just throw them away because it makes their game horrible. It's just not an engaging experience. Full stop. Now, this was the case in open beta, but I figured this feature would get added, so I didn't really mention it in my previous review, but there's still no POIs marked on the map. Like, still, really? If you're a new player, this will be just another thing beating you down, having you stare at that refund button really quick. The other interesting thing they do is they use inventory to balance combat in a way that makes it less fun. It takes forever to switch between items, more so than you might rightfully think for no particular reason, and the items that are spent in your action slot don't get refilled from your backpack. Now, this would make sense if you had a more robust loadout system like a chest rig, belt, pockets, or if even consumable items stacked, like at all. But no, you have 5 action slots. And I don't mean that you have your weapons and then those slots. I mean you have 5 item slots total. So effectively you have 4 because one of them is going to be your weapon. And if you use any of the consumables in those slots, you have to go in your backpack and manually move one back into that slot. Oh, I can hear the alien mains now. But unless you have your hands in your pockets trying to figure out if that's your dick or a glow stick, how am I supposed to kill the whole 3-man by myself? Okay, you can say it's for balance, but balance can be done without deliberately hindering the quality of life the player is experiencing. It can be done so in a challenging but fun way. Again, though, these features are actually nothing new in regards that they were in the open beta. I just figured these were things you can be smoothed out, but apparently this is just deliberate design choices. And now, in addition to this, now when you trigger an alien egg, you drop the item you're currently carrying. Like, this isn't fun. You're fighting the game more than you're fighting the alien at this point. And again, that's just going to be another thing pushing new players to quit and refund the game quick. And if you've been around this channel, you know me, I'm a huge advocate for giving feedback. I rush right on over to Discord suggestions, and you see basically every suggestion pointing these issues out being brigaded by the community, which I'm sure will happen here to some degree. A lot of the community is left over from the previous version of the game and alien mains, so most new players have gone there, given feedback, and will consistently receive skill issue responses, which helps nobody. Least of all the game when these players ultimately just quit and hit the refund button. Alright, so I'm going to go off script a little bit, and by the analytics, those of you who are still remaining here are either subs or people who can sit down and listen to long form content honestly. Normally, I don't bother with videos like this. I try to be a lot more even-handed, but the direction I see these devs going really saddens me because I can already see the low player count going nowhere, and the big marketing push that's going to happen in like maybe 3 to 6 months with some corresponding content drop and probably a shutdown announcement close to a year. This is a pattern that it's all too common these days. Credit where credit's due, man. Honestly, these guys already put out a solo queue, which took the Cycle Frontier close to a year to even consider, and have reverted the movement changes that slowed the player down even more. So kudos, man. Like, kudos. But at this point, I cannot in good conscience recommend spending money on this game. If it turns around in the future, I'll happily eat crow. But for now, I'll call it like I see it. Thanks for watching. Good hunting.